The New England colonies were a huge contributor to the American Revolution, especially Boston.
The people of Boston were upset at the king and British Parliament. They were taxing the colonists to regain the money they spent protecting the North American colonies during the French and Indian War. But they didn't give them a representative. They created laws called acts that taxed different products and supplies. These acts were the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and the Townshend Acts.
There were a few other acts that anchored the colonists. The Currency Act banned the colonists to distribute paper money. This was one of England's attempts intended to keep control of the colonists. Another one of the acts was the Quartering Act. This forced the colonists to house and provide for British soldiers. Some people even had multiple soldiers living with them at a time.
The presence of British troops angered the Bostonians. 1 out of 3 men was a British soldier. Hostility grew between the colonists and the soldiers stayed in the city. This led to the Boston Massacre.
On March 5th, 1770, things turned violent.
A soldier was stationed outside of the customs house during the night. A crowd of people in the street mobbed him. They were throwing rocks, snow, and ice at the soldier.
Boo! Boo! You suck!
You ungrateful colonists!
We don't like the British! Go home!
The soldier called for help and Captain Thomas Preston arrived to his aid with 7 other soldiers. The mob got more violent and started taunting the soldiers, daring them to fire, and throwing more things, including clubs.
A soldier fires his gun. Thinking they were given an order, the other soldiers fire as well. Crispus Attucks was the first to die. He and 2 other Crown members died after being shot. 2 others died later that night. 6 were injured.
The newspapers reported on this event. One of them included an engraving that Paul Revere had made called the Bloody Massacre.
Paul Revere's engraving wasn't fully accurate of the event. It appears to be morning and there is no snow on the ground. The engraving also makes it look like the people were innocent and defenseless, and there is no sign of them mobbing the soldiers. There is also a dog depicted, most likely used as a patriot propaganda.
Not only was it a false and misleading representation of what actually happened, but Paul Revere copied Henry Pelham's engraving called The Fruits of Arbitrary Power and gave him no credit.
John Adams defended the men in court. He disliked the British but wanted them to have a fair trial. Thomas Preston was not found guilty, along with 5 of the British soldiers. The other 2 were convicted of the manslaughter and were branded on their thumbs.
The Bostonians continued to protest against the king and British Parliament. The lawmakers continued to tax the colonists and establish acts. They continued to tax them without giving them a representative. This led to one of the most notorious events in the American Revolution, the Boston Tea Party.
Before you learn about the Boston Tea Party, you're going to have to know about the Sons of Liberty. The Sons of Liberty were a group of patriots who boycotted and fought against British taxes. They led and organized the Boston Tea Party. Many of the participants of the Tea Party were from this organization.
The Sons of Liberty organized the Boston Tea Party to protest the Tea Act, an act Parliament passed that lowered the cost of tea, but a portion of it went to the British government and king.
Despite the decrease of price, colonists didn't like this act. One reason was because the East India Company was selling directly to colonists. This meant that the merchants couldn't sell tea. The New England colonies don't have good soil for crops. This meant that farming was not an available job, which made selling goods even more important to the people of Boston. Another reason is because the people thought it was just a plan to get the colonists to accept giving tax to the British government.
In protest, the Sons of Liberty made a plan to dump tea being delivered on the ships into the ocean. They went through their plan on December 16th, 1773.
In the middle of the night, the colonists dressed up as Native Americans from the Mohawk tribe to disguise themselves and enter the ship carrying crates of tea. The protest was non-violent and the only thing broken was chest locks.
The king didn't like what the colonists did. Because of the events in the Boston Tea Party, Parliament made the Intolerable Acts. The act's effects included the closing of the Boston Harbor, an updated Quartering Act, a complete change in Massachusetts government, and British officers and government officials with criminal charges were allowed to have their trials moved to England.
Many thought the new laws were unfair. The The colonists responded by creating the First Continental Congress. This was a meeting between delegates from almost every colony to discuss how to deal with Parliament's actions. Because the meeting was held in Philadelphia, no delegates from Georgia were able to attend.
There was also a second Tea Party in Boston. While not as remembered as the first, it inspired tea acts in other colonies.
The Boston Tea Party and formation of the First Continental Congress were important in the start of the American Revolution. This caused an uproar in the other colonies. Word spread fast, and anger started rising. All of this led to the Revolutionary War and the eventual independence of the United States of America.